So in the last video, we started talking about variables. What I want us to do right now is look at code and try to understand what it's doing. So this is a sample program. It's created in a class called interest. So that means whoever created this must have created a project called interest. And this code is in a file called interest.java. Now inside the public class, we have our main. We have our curly brace that starts main. And here we created some variables. So this, those 3 lines of code are going to RAM and requesting space for 3 floats. And remember, a float is a variable that can handle decimal numbers. And then here we're giving them values. So the principal variable, we're putting 17,000. We're going to talk about this F in a minute. The rate, we're giving it 0.027. And then we're calculating the interest. So we're saying if you multiply the principal by the rate, then you're going to get the interest. And then maybe we're going to update the principal to say, well, now I want to update the money in the bank to be whatever it was, the principal plus the interest. And then I'm going to start printing some information. So this is a sample program that we might be able to write by the end of today's class. Now, when we're creating the data types, the byte, short, int, long, float, and double, all the numeric data types, there are some characters that we write when we're doing things in English that we cannot write in our program. So you cannot put a comma, you cannot put a $sign, you cannot put a %sign. Those are invalid variables. One of the things that we'll notice with floats is that we need to put a lowercase f and an uppercase f. So when I come here and I say, for example, float salary, let's say my salary is 40,000. And if I say 40,000 like that, Java's not going to like it. It's going to complain about the comma. Well, here it complains that it can't understand what we're doing. It just says identify expected. It doesn't really know what we're doing. It's expecting that I'm supposed to have here like another word, like I don't know, cost equal, for example, something. So the first thing we notice is that I cannot have a comma. I can't come and I say, oh, well, this is $40,000. I'm going to put a $sign. Can't do that. If it's a number, it has to all be a number without any additional symbols. Now, I can create a float, but here, notice that it doesn't really like it. It says possible lossy conversion from double to float. Somehow, it thinks that this number is a double and I'm trying to store it in a space for a float. And the reason it doesn't like it is that in Java, if you just put a number like this, it needs some space in RAM to store that number. And because it's a decimal number, it says, well, I don't know whether they want it to be single precision, float, or double precision, double. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume it's a double. So if you just put a number in Java and it has a decimal number, it's going to assume it's a double. And now a double requires 8 bytes. And you're trying to store it in a place for a float, which is 4 bytes, and it doesn't like that. So if you want to create a variable that's a float, unfortunately, you have to put either a lowercase f or you can put an uppercase f. Both will work. So you just have to make sure you put an f, a lowercase f or an uppercase f next to the float. The same thing with a long. If you just put a number like this, it'll assume that it is an int. And so what you need to do if you're storing something that's a long, I don't know, distance to Earth. If you try doing it like this, well, actually here it worked. But if it's a huge number, it's not going to let me until I put the L next to it. So notice that sometimes when you're doing, when you're creating a float and a long, those are the 2 types. You just have to be careful that you put an F next to the float and an L next to the long. Now we're not really going to be using long a lot in this course, but we're going to be using floats a lot. So you're going to see this a lot, and you'll I'll keep repeating it to remind you. A nice thing about numbers also is that you can do scientific notation. So for example, let's say I want to store the number 123.45. Well, 123.45 is not a hard number to store, but if I want to store it in scientific notation, in E notation, Well, 123.45 is the same as 1.2345 times 10 to the power 2. So if I move the decimal 2 places over, now this number is 1.2 times 100. So I have to account for the moving of the decimal. So how do I write times 10 to the power 2? Well, I just write the number E2, and this is going to be like to the power 10 times 10 to the power 2. And I can do that even if it's a huge number, like here, to the power 9, or if it's a small number, then the power is negative. Now, we're not going to be using scientific notation a lot in this course, but I just want you to know that you can do scientific notation. So this is it for the numbers that we talked about. So the numeric data types are byte, short, int, long, and then float and double for decimals. Now we can also store Booleans, and Booleans, I said, are for yes or no, true or false. Is something true? Did it happen or it didn't happen? So for example, let's say I keep track of who comes late to my class. So I might have a Boolean that I call late and I set it equal to false at the beginning. And if someone comes in late, I set it to true. Or maybe I have another Boolean like, did they eat lunch yet? True or false? Now here, the words true and false, they are case sensitive. So if I come here and I say Boolean a lunch and I say true like this, it's not going to work. Okay? So true, it doesn't understand it. It says variable true, cannot find symbol. It doesn't know what it means. If I try making it true with an uppercase T, it doesn't understand it either. It must be true with a lowercase t, and it needs to be false with a lowercase f. So notice that they are blue, they are reserved words in Java. So we're going to be using Booleans more in the next chapter, but I just want you to get introduced to them here. And finally, char, it's to store a single character. So a single character means any character on your keyboard. It can be a letter, like A, B, C, D, E. It can be uppercase, it can be lowercase, it can be a digit, like 1, 2, 3. It can be the quotes, the ampersand, the percent sign. The only thing you need to know is that you need to put single quotes around these characters. So if I come here and I want to say, like, let's say a digit, char 9, for example, I can't put the number 9 like this. 9 is a number, but what I need to do is put quotes around it. And I'm going to show you the difference of between these in a second. So here, system.out.println, my char is, and I say 9, it's going to print me the character 9. So here, 9 is not a number. It is just a character on your keyboard. It can be 9. It can be parenthesis. Okay. It can be whatever you want. Now, what happens if I just put the number 9 without the single quotes? I don't get the number 9. I got something else. And here I really don't know what I got. Okay. I got something. So every character gets stored on RAM as basically a number. So remember we said the computer only understands zeros and ones. So every single character, so when I go to and store the letter A, this is stored as zeros and ones. Well, how are these zeros and ones like calculated? Well, this is called binary, and the letter A, the character A, is stored as 01000001. So this is how A would get stored. Now, there's something called binary numbers, base 2 numbers. So what this number means to us in English is 65. So if you wanted to store the letter A, you could actually say A in single quotes, or you could say 65. So if I come back here and I change this 9 to a 65, I will actually get the letter A printed. Well, what if I wanted it to be B? Well, B is the next letter. It's going to be 66, and they go sequentially. So this is called the unicode of the character. Every single character has a special code, the way it gets stored. So when you put letter A in, it's stored as these signals, these little bits. So if we go back and we look at the 9 that we were trying to print, 9 is actually the tab. So the tab key on my keyboard is the number 9. And notice that uppercase letters and lowercase letters are stored differently. So if you write your essay with a capital letter, you want this capital letter to stay reserved. So here, if I put an uppercase A, it gets stored as an uppercase A, but if I make it lowercase a, I get a lowercase a. If I want to use the decimal number for it, which is 97, I will get that. Now again, you don't have to memorize those numbers, the 65 and 66. Those are just to show you what's going on underneath the hood. There are some special characters that we might want to be printing at some point. So let's say I want to print a quote. You know, I want to print a single quote. Well, how do I put a quote in there? Every time I try, I'm trying to print a quote and it's not letting me. So in Java, we can use the slash as an escape character. So if I want to put a quote in there inside my double quotes, so I have my double quotes, and now I want to put another quote in there, I have to put a slash before it. And that's called an escape sequence. It means when Java sees this symbol, it says, oh, that means whatever is coming after, I need to treat it in a special way. So I can do that with single quotes. I can do it with double quotes. Let's say here I wanted to print double quotes around the word char. I would have to use the escape sequence, because if I didn't, it's going to think the string is ending. So if I don't put this, if I don't put the backslash, it's going to think that the string started here and ended here, and it's not going to consider the word is part of the string. So what I'm telling it is, I want you to treat this quote that's coming after as a special character to print. I don't want you to think of it as the ending quote. And so you can do that with the single quote. You can do it with the double quote. You can do it with the tab. So the tab is /t. So if I want to put like a tab, I come here and say /t, so that after the word is, there's a tab before the quote gets printed. So this is a tab, a single tab. Or I might want to do a new line. So I want to say my, and then I want to put a new line /n. And so this will take print, kind of go to the next line. So it printed my, and then it went to the next line, and then it printed a space, quote. So these are called escape sequences. We will be using the /n a lot, so I highly recommend that you memorize this one. And so here I have a sentence that says good morning, and then immediately I see /n. /n means it's going to go to the next line. And then I have a /t, which means, oh, I want you to do a tab. So now it tabbed in and it printed welcome to. And then I see /quotes. That means I want you to print quotes, Java, and then /quotes again, and it printed the quotes class. And this is a println, so it went to the next line. And now I want two tabs. And so I put /t, and I don't have to separate them with spaces. And so I can use some special characters to do extra nice things with my printing. Now, I just want to point out one more definition before we stop for today's class. And this word is called literal. So what we are doing when we are storing information in a variable is we are storing some literals. So these constant values, we call those literals. We can call them the constant value or a literal. So here we refer to principal and rate and letter. We refer to those as variables, and numbers and letters and characters that appear, we call those literals. Okay. So this is it for today's class. And for this classwork, what we're going to be doing is just practicing creating different variables. So what I want you to do is I want you to create a new project in NetBeans, and I want you to create a variable called hourly rate that is a float, and I want you to give it a value of 11.25. So I'm just going to do the first line with you. So this would look like, it has to be a float. So I'm going to put float. I want it to be called hourly rate. So I'm going to say hourly rate, and I want you to put the value 11.25 in it. So I'm going to say 11.25. And oh, it gives me an error. I need to put an F because this is a float. So this is how you would do the first part of this classwork, A. And so what I want you to do is I want you to create each of these variables one at a time, and then I want you to print all the variables to the screen in the order above. So I want you to have each one appear in its own system.out.println. So for example, after you create all your variables, you'll have system.out.println, and I'll just say hourly rate. This will print for me the 11.25. Okay, and once you get it working in NetBeans, what you're going to do is you're going to go to HackerRank, click on the link, go to the Classwork, test your code, make sure it matches the output that's expected, and then you're going to submit your Java file and a screenshot of passing all your test cases on HackerRank.